Excerpts from the chapter Faith, No Fear. All the colorful melodrama that transpired wherever Maharaji went, all the various ways the devotees thought of and reacted to Maharaji, and his many phases in response, the anger and abuse, the chiding, the tenderness, all of this filled the time and space when we were around him. And yet, we knew that this was a part but not the essence of the relationship. It was not acts or words or opinions, but something far more subtle that Maharaji was transmitting to us. It was deep within ourselves that Maharaji was gently transforming us. There was no aspect of life that was not touched by him. Maharaji guided us on all levels spiritual, mental, and material. He gave instructions in how to raise children and in being a good marriage partner and in business. But these were not specific rules or instructions. He guided by changing the heart. I was invited by a group of high powered folks at Esalen to join them in studying with a Sufi teacher in South America. I was very uncertain about the whole matter. So I wrote to KK in India and asked him to find out from Maharaji whether I should go to Chile for these studies. Then the answer came back from KK. Maharaji says that you can go and study with a Sufi saint if you desire. As I read the letter, something happened in my heart, and I suddenly felt absolutely certain that I didn't want to go, and so I didn't. On my next visit to India, when discussing this letter with KK, he told me. When I asked Maharaji, he said, if he wishes, let him go. And then he said, why would he want to go? But then quickly he added, don't write that last part in the letter. It was at this deeper level that we felt Maharaji to be the shepherd and ourselves to be a part of the flock. Through this unspoken process, we developed faith where previously there had been fear. Our faith was that in the midst of the changing uncertainties of the universe, if we kept Maharaji in our hearts, if we just stayed under his blanket in trust, then it would be all right. Devotees who had been with Maharaji for many years often reflected a fearlessness in the manner in which they lived as a result of their faith in his protection. Some he specifically taught to be fearless. Maharaji once called me over and said, Ram Das, you are to fear nothing. A man's 8-month-old child was standing on a 30-foot balcony. A servant and the child's brother were there playing with a kite when the child fell to the marble floor 30 feet below. The mother tried to catch the child but couldn't. The child didn't move, but still there seemed to be no broken bones. Suddenly the child laughed, and the doctors could find nothing wrong at all and said that this was impossible. Some days later, Maharaji came to their house and said, you were worried. You still didn't realize who you have on your shoulders protecting you. The baby didn't fall on the ground. It fell on my lap. While in Madras one day, Maharaji said, I want to show my eyes to a good doctor. Who is a good doctor here? I told him there was a specialist nearby. Maharaji said, all right, I'll show my eyes to him. That evening, I found out that this doctor was out of town. So I fixed an appointment with another specialist for 10:30 in the morning. When I explained the situation to Maharaji, he asked who the other doctor was. And when I told him his name, Maharaji said, Nay, I want to see the first doctor, not this other one. Maharaji told me to come to him after 3 days. This was a long time, and I was impatient. After 2 days, the first doctor had returned, so I made an appointment for Maharaji. I went immediately to the Dharmashala to tell him, but Maharaji's luggage was just being carried out. When I told him the doctor had come, he laughed and said, Today I am going to Rameshwaram. He refused to let me accompany him. Nearly a month later, on my way to Bombay, I broke my spectacles. A specialist there made new spectacles for me, but within 5 minutes of putting them on, I got a serious headache. The specialist checked everything and said that they were all right, but it would take a few days to get used to them. I returned to Madras, but I still couldn't put on those specs for more than a few moments. I decided to show them to a specialist in Madras and wondered which one I should go to, the first doctor or the second. Now, the second was very quick and always available, while the first was very busy and one had to wait for hours to see him. But I remembered what Maharaji had said, so I made an appointment with the first one. When I told my son, he asked to come along for a checkup. The doctor tested my eyes and found that the new specs the Bombay doctor had given were the wrong prescription. That was corrected. When he examined my son's eyes, he found the cornea was torn, serious enough for an immediate operation. Although he missed his final examinations at college, my son's eyes were saved. This is what Maharajji's Leela of a month earlier had been about. A devotee from Allahabad said he had met Maharajji 40 years before. He was traveling at night and he had become totally lost when he suddenly saw a cave with a light in it. As he approached the cave, he discovered Maharajji sitting there. Maharajji gave him food, and after the meal, he said, "You are lost. Go in that direction." In about 15 paces, the devotee suddenly saw the village. But when he turned around, the cave and the terrain of the cave were no longer there. Maharajji often called one devotee, a poor man, to accompany him on long pilgrimages. The devotee always agreed without a complaint, although he often had to borrow money to finance these trips. Once Maharajji asked him to come to Badrinath. Before leaving, the man pointed to the small picture of Maharajji on their puja table and told his wife that for any reason she wanted to communicate with him while he was gone, she should address herself to Maharajji's photo, since the two would be together. A few days later, high in the Himalayas, Maharajji suddenly turned to this devotee and said, "Why have you come here?" The devotee replied that he had come at Maharajji's request. Maharajji said, "At your home there is no dal, no flour, nothing. Your wife is very worried because there is nothing to eat and you are far away. You should have at least provided bread for them to eat." But Maharajji's presence had an intoxicating effect upon people. Their worries vanished and they felt that he was taking care of everything for the best. Half an hour after he had berated the devotee for leaving his wife without food, Maharajji shouted out, "Food has come! They have got food! The Kashmiri mother gave it to them. Don't worry." When he returned, the devotee questioned his wife. She said that when the food had finally run out, she had gone to Maharajji's picture and told him that there was no more food in the house. Within a few minutes, a rich neighbor who treated her like a daughter came to the house with bags of flour, rice, dal, and so forth. She went to the picture and thanked Maharajji. Once Maharajji saved me from a snake bite. I was passing the winter in a tiny room in Haldwani where I was talking with someone, when suddenly I left off in mid sentence for no accountable reason. I turned around and looked into my room. It was very strange. A snake was crawling into the room, and once inside, it crawled under a gunny sack. I thought, why was it that I turned around just then? It must be Neem Karoli Baba's doing, even though physically Maharajji was hundreds of miles away. I also thought that it must be a poisonous snake. Otherwise, there would be no reason for Maharajji to show it to me. I very carefully put the snake in a canister and released it outside. About 5 years later, I was complaining to Maharajji that he wasn't helping me in any way or protecting me. I was having too many troubles. Maharajji said, "Why? I saved your life once. I saved you from the snake." I had known in my mind that he had done it. Such things do not happen by accident. One dark, rainy night at Kainchi, Maharaji woke up several devotees and said there was a jeep half a mile up the road that was stuck. He said to take tea to the passengers. The devotees went running because he told them to hurry. Maharaji wanted them to go up where there was no path. They found the jeep with four women and a man stranded there with no blankets. Maharajji sent even more devotees up to the jeep, saying to them, "That tea will be cold. Bring them more tea." When the people were finally brought to the temple, Maharajji said, "I used to visit the home of these women 30 years ago, and they gave me a blanket and were kind." He gave them blankets, and they remembered him from before. Normally, when Maharajji was away, he would send his blessings from where he was. He wouldn't go to the phone. But while I was away for 6 months in 1967, he visited my family in Kanpur practically once a month. While I was in Germany, my colleague and I were thinking of buying a car for the time and selling it later. We'd already decided on the car, which we were determined to buy on Sunday. On Saturday, we didn't normally get any mail delivery, but this day, before the sale, a letter came from my wife. She said, "Maharaji has come today. He says that you're going to buy a car and that you shouldn't do that. If you have any such intentions, Maharaji's orders are to give them up." I told my friend that the deal was off and that if he bought it, I wouldn't travel with him. How did Maharaji do this? He came one morning to visit my family and he asked my wife to write that letter. He said, "He'll do something foolish. Forbid him." He went away and after 2 hours came again and asked her if she had written the letter. She hadn't. He said, "Well, I'm going to stay here until you write that letter and post it, otherwise it'll be too late." Only when it was posted did Maharaji leave. It could have reached us on Monday, but it came in time. That was the first and last time the mail came on Saturday afternoon. That was his grace. But why did he bother to come all the way from Kainchi to tell my wife? If he wanted, there were enough people right in front of him to bother with. Why did he think of me? Once in Haridwar, a man was bathing in the river and lost his footing. The man was tossed about and carried in a whirlpool like a log. He was quite a bit older than his wife, who was much devoted to him. After taking Maharajji's name, she jumped into the river and pulled her husband ashore. When they went to the place where Maharajji was, people there told them that Maharajji had been impossible and very abusive and would not let anyone near him. The woman went up and gently tapped at the door. He sweetly asked her in and inquired after her nose ring, which she had lost in the river. The loss of a nose ring is a bad omen for an Indian woman, suggesting her husband's death. When her husband came along, Maharajji said, "You were going down the river like a piece of wood being whirled around." Apparently, the changes in Maharajji's behavior, the abusiveness, had been involved in saving the man. Maharajji takes care of all his devotees in so many ways. One day, a devotee was on his way to Kainchi and en route stopped at a roadside food stand and ate some fried pakoras. In those days, he ate pakoras every day. When he arrived at Kainchi, the first thing Maharajji said was, "Do you eat pakoras? You've been eating those things for a long time now. Why do you eat them? You'll ruin your stomach." From that day onward, This devotee never again ate pakoras from the bazaar. A woman devotee was sitting in the corner of the room near a strange man. Maharajji said to her, "Come sit here. The bad karma of other people can affect a person." A doctor from Bombay who attended many VIPs, including Nehru, was a somewhat stiff person, though he often gave massages to others. Another devotee was present when the doctor was visiting Maharajji. Maharajji saw the doctor coming and went into another room. He said, "I'll not see him." Then from the other room, Maharajji yelled, "You couldn't save Nehru. What's wrong?" The doctor said, "When I gave him the massage, he got better, but then his nerves got very bad." The other devotee asked the doctor if he had travelled outside India. Yes, for 12 months attending VIPs. She asked him how he knew Maharajji. He replied, "I never believed in saints. In the independence movement of 1942, I was a revolutionary and there were orders out to shoot me. I was in Kanprayag near Badrinath. I was at a small dharmshala, and while I was bathing, Maharajji was upbraiding a Swami nearby. As I passed by, Maharajji caught hold of me and said, 'You're hungry. Go into that room.' In the room, there were 2 leaf plates of fresh puris and potatoes, while Maharajji told me to eat. When I finished all I could eat, Maharajji said, 'Take more with you. Now run. Within an hour, the police will be here. Go to Tibet, but don't go by this route. Go by that one.' But I had some doubts about Maharajji and left a friend behind to wait and see. In an hour, a district superintendent of police, who knew Maharajji, came with a search party inquiring for the doctor. Maharajji asked him, 'Who would come at this hour?' And as they started to proceed toward Tibet, Maharajji warned them not to. 'This is the season for avalanches, and if you go on, an avalanche will kill you. Go back.' So they went back." Excerpts from the chapter Key to the Mind. Sometimes, when many people came to him, he would relate each person's personal history, including what their forefathers had done, as if he had been well acquainted with that person for a very long time. "Maharajji told me all sorts of things. He said, 'You have been playing hockey with the mother.' He was referring to the fact that I had been at Sri Aurobindo's ashram for a while and had played hockey with the mother. Maharajji turned to me one day and said, 'Do you still send money to that Benares Pandit?' 'Yes, Maharajji, I do,' I replied. Maharajji had never met this Pandit, nor had I ever told Maharajji that I regularly sent money to him. This Pandit was a reciter of the Ramayana and he lived off donations from his listeners. Maharajji knew all things and he would look after people he'd never met. A devotee who worked for the railroad brought a couple for the first time to see Maharajji. The wife was told by Maharajji in private, 'You have been supporting a poor 10-year-old child. That is very fine of you to do.' When she came out of the room, she was quite astounded because no one, not even her husband, knew that she was supporting that child. Our family is large but not rich, yet with his blessings, we have been carrying on quite well. I got my job in the bank by his grace. After I had my job interview, I went to see him. He told me all the questions I was asked and said, 'You'll be selected.' In fact, I had come out at top of the list. I think it was he who made me go with him. I used to go with him, but I never wanted to go. The Mas, as they were called, were women whose greatest pleasure was in taking care of Maharajji. Once a doctor had said Maharajji should take certain pills at 10 a.m. On this particular morning, the Maas brought the medicine 10 minutes late. Maharajji said fiercely, "If you people don't take better care of me, I'll turn your minds against me," which was the worst threat he could make. I was the station master at Mount Abu, and Maharajji had promised to come there sometime. When I was off duty, it was my policy never to go into the station. But this one day, I had been in a long conversation with a friend, and as I left, I wanted somehow to break my policy by cutting through the station in order to save time getting home. Just as I got into the station and was rushing through, the Bombay mail arrived, and there was Maharajji tapping at the window. Wherever Maharajji was, there was chaos and confusion. Sometimes two people were sent to do the same task. Other times one was sent to undo what the first person was in the process of doing. Maharajji would tell one person one thing and another something opposite. When confronted with such inconsistencies, he would deny all. Such confusion served a number of obvious purposes. First, it veiled his powers so that no one could be quite certain what had just happened. And the confusion also allowed each person to hear what he or she needed to hear from among the conflicting bits of information. Such inconsistencies served to loosen the minds of those devotees with problems of rigid thinking. From another point of view, one could understand the confusion as a reflection of the fact that Maharajji was not just one person. As a mirror, he was the reflection of whomever was thinking upon him, and he was conscious on many planes at once. Thus, one statement such as "I can do nothing" might be followed moments later by the statement "I hold the keys to the mind. Everyone is my puppet." Appreciating this dimension of Maharajji made one delight in the confusion. Maharajji would make predictions or say something of personal import in an offhand manner in the middle of a political discussion. Often his predictions wouldn't come true. If you wanted a specific prediction from Maharajji, he would often be vague, and he'd never give an explanation for his predictions. Anything you say about him, you can also say the opposite. Once, in the middle of the night at the ashram, we were awakened by shouts and sounds of footsteps. People were running to and fro, and lights were going on all over the place. We stuck our heads out the door to discover that Maharajji was up. He wanted rotis. Then he screamed, "There is a snake in the mother's room." And when they went to check it out, what they found there was a rope. At Kainchi, he had this simple little room which we used to call his office. There was a window with shutters on the inside that he could open, where he'd often sit looking out and giving darshan. Sometimes he would jump around in that room like a monkey in a cage or press his face to the bars. At other times, someone would come to the window to see him and he'd just slam the shutters closed. He'd start off a conversation saying one thing, and then by the end of the conversation, he'd be making the opposite point. He once told one Western devotee about smoking dope. He said to him, "You like smoking charas, hashish. That's good. Shiva smokes charas. That means you like Shiva." We were all really thrilled to hear this, but then he started to turn it around saying, "What's better that you do, smoke charas or eat food?" About 5 minutes later, he said, "Don't smoke." Once he said, "Oh, it's very nice and peaceful here in Kainchi. When you come here, you can really get peace. Shanti milta hai." Then, a few weeks later, some truck went by on the road and he said, "Oh, this Kainchi, so noisy. No peace here. Ashanti." He'd gone from Shanti to Ashanti in the same place. It was sometimes very hard to figure out what Maharajji was saying. Often he'd repeat the same word about 5 times. One of his favorite things was saying the same thought over and over again, just rewording it different ways, drilling it into your head. If it was something about someone getting married, for example, he'd say, "You got married, didn't you?" "No, you didn't. Did you?" "You did." He'd go on like that back and forth. It was the same way he'd play with things. He'd pick up something, turn it over, flip it back over, then flip it over again. He'd do the same thing with words. He'd take a sentence and turn it around, and your head with it. One morning, Maharajji greeted his devotees with complaints of a very sore knee. Some devotees took him seriously and they suggested various cures. Others took the complaint lightly and told Maharajji to cure himself since he was the cause of his complaints. Nevertheless, oils and balms and compresses were applied to the area of pain, all to no avail. Maharajji insisted that these remedies wouldn't work, and what was needed was a certain medicine he'd once seen in Dada's home. He called it the man medicine and twirled his mustache to indicate it. He said it was the only medicine that would work. All this meant nothing to this devotee, who couldn't recall any mustache related medicine in his home. Later in the day, the devotee went to the bazaar to buy supplies for the ashram. While in the pharmacy, he noticed a picture of a mustachioed man on a small box containing Sloan's balm, a heat producing medicine. He purchased it and gave it to Maharajji. Maharajji shouted, "That's it, the mustache medicine, put it on." Moments after the balm was rubbed onto his knee, Maharajji announced that the pain had vanished and that now he was fine. Janaki and Draupadi were sitting before Maharajji, and Maharajji turned to Janaki and asked, "Who do I like better, you or Draupadi?" Janaki said sweetly, "Why, Maharajji, you love us all the same." Maharajji replied, "Nahi, I like Draupadi better," which of course upset her a great deal. She got up and walked out, heading for the Vrindavan bazaar in order to run away. What kind of guru has preferences? While she was in the bazaar, she realized that she couldn't run away after all. Wanting to do something nice for someone, she bought a little brass murti of Hanuman and returned to the temple and put it in her room. Immediately afterward, Maharajji caught her and asked her, "Where have you been? What have you been doing? What did you buy?" She told him about the little murti. He told her to bring it to him, and when she did, he handled it a while and looked it over and then told her to give it to me. I don't know if she had meant it for me or if Maharajji initiated that. The very day after I privately wished for a little Hanuman Murti, I was given this one. I'd be alone with Maharajji in his room and I'd want everybody to share this experience. So I'd say, "Maharajji, they'd really love to come in." He'd say, "Should I let them in?" I'd say, "Yes, let them in." He'd say, "Go bring them in." Sometimes he'd say, "Nahi, you just be here." Or he'd say something about all of them being badmash. I'd argue with him that they were all not badmash, that some of them were confused just like me. He'd say that that was true, then add, "Nahi, they're all badmash." At the time of the big Havan, the fire ceremony, many people said they were going to fast, but after 2 days they ended up not fasting. And all of those who said they weren't going to fast ended up fasting.